Okay, have two little Syx Motos. I don't know exactly what other, I think they're just regular. Yeah, they're regular because I got the whole shot edition. X Works over there. My niece and nephews had to replace the motor on the yellow one because the starter locked up, which is this. Well, the housing, that's the housing of the starter, but anyway, it locked up. So I was gonna go ahead and just do away with that because I don't like them anyway. But was going to just buy the transmission since this wasn't actually locked up. It was just the starter. So this was good. However, the clutch and all that, this was put on there permanently. Well, hypothetically permanently, whatever. Went ahead and took that off. I was going to put the little clutch on here, and it's just way too big of a hassle. So I said forget it and just bought a new one for 70 bucks. Came with the transmission. However, the bad part is this transmission is super long. I'll give you an example. Here's the original old transmission. Original old. Compare them side by side. Get some junk out of the way. This one's longer. So of course, since it's longer, I took the chain off this. The reason why I couldn't use this shaft right here, this shaft, was actually way longer. It was actually a really long shaft. So this one came with a short shaft, which is what the sprocket rides on right here. This shaft was actually like this tall on this one. This one had a short one. I went ahead and pulled this one out. Was gonna put the short. I put the short shaft in here. Was gonna use this, but this is so tight. This chain is so tight that it won't even spin. So I added a link. It was way too loose on the chain, so I said forget it. It was just a big pain in the neck, so I said forget it and went ahead and bought this one separately. And I just went by eye. I could tell by looking at it that it was a shorter one. The longer one hit this frame, and I did not want to have to cut into that or make any adjustments to that. Couldn't really bring the whole motor forward because that was a big pain in the neck, because then this wouldn't mount up here in the back. So I went ahead and just bought a new one for like 40 bucks, and now it runs good. But just a future reference, if anybody plans on doing away with that starter, but you don't have to. You can buy the starter too, but the starter alone's like 60-70 bucks. So I didn't want to have to pay $70 for the starter. And turn around, and I had the problem of the transmission being too long, so I didn't want to have to deal with that because I knew I was going to run into more problems. The only thing I had to make an adjustment on since the new transmission, there's a gap. This gap right here. See how there's a gap? Just this is like a 2 or 3 inch gap, and I did away with this. So that brought that transmission closer to the motor. So you can't use your old transmission because that sprocket, or the neck on that holds these little sprockets on here, is that long. And the new one that you get, since you're doing away with that starter, that new one that goes straight up on here, that neck is gonna have to come way shorter, and that sprocket sits on. So since I got that on there, I had to make new holes for the bottom mounts because it just wasn't, for some reason, it wasn't sitting right. So I had to drill out new holes for the motor mount, for the bottom motor mounts. But it's running good, and obviously I haven't rode it, but it runs good. And that one right there, he couldn't figure out why it kept dying. You'd rev it up, and you'd let it idle for a minute, and it'd rev up real high like it was going out of gas, and then it would just die. It would do it every time. And I figured it was probably a spark plug or the carburetor needed cleaned. Well, I didn't have to do any of that. I did change the spark plug. I did change that. It's a piece of junk. They're good for when you first start out, but you're gonna have to upgrade. And that's what I got. It's a Bosch. There's the part number. I went ahead and drained the oil, or the oil, it might as well be oil. Went ahead and drained the gas out of it, and out of both of them, and that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like in the light. It's way too dark. Don't mind this bottom stuff. That's just what was already in there when I filled it, but that's what it looks like. This is what it should look like for the most part. Maybe a tiny bit darker, but that's pretty well perfect. He had it way too dark compared to both of them. So I went ahead and put gas in that new Bosch spark plug in there, and it fired right up. However, it does smoke pretty bad, but I'm just assuming it's the old gas that I didn't get all the way out. It just needs cleaned out. Maybe it's lingering in the pipe. So went ahead and ran it for a minute. It ran good, idled good, so I'm gonna call them good. But if you ever want to change the motor out on these, that's what I would recommend. It looks like it is leaking oil, but I can't really tell where it was. Either that or this was just leaking, because I remounted it without the starter on there, and it fired right up, but it seemed like it wasn't running right. It might have a hole somewhere. I just can't find it. If it has a hole in the side of the case, it'll suck air. It'll cause it to idle way too high. It'll seem like you're giving it a whole bunch of gas when you're not. But anyway, these are his bikes. I don't mind those bikes. They're pretty good bikes, but I preferred the whole shot because they actually look more like a dirt bike. Those ones, they look good, but the what do you call them? The side fenders that sit right above the exhaust and the fatty pipe, they sit up higher than the front number plate on these, and I don't like that. They kind of look stupid. Those ones don't. They point down just like on a real dirt bike. So that's my take on changing a motor for a Syx Moto. My advice to you, if something locks up or anything, do your research, make sure you get the right parts. I would just personally just buy the motor separate from the transmission and use the old transmission if you can. If you don't have if you have a starter, that works fine, but the motor blew up, reuse the starter, because this one, I should have just bought another starter. I wouldn't even have had no problems at all, but I didn't want to buy, it's not going to affect the bike any. The only thing it's going to do is make it to where you can't electric start it, which they don't really need to do anyway. So they can learn to pull them with a pull rope. But all right, thanks for watching.